Yeah, just one live stream per event. It's not possible to live stream Facebook and YouTube. Just one live stream per event. It's not possible to. Okay, guys. Just let's wait a couple of minutes as other attendees are joining us. Okay. Okay, I think we can start. So, hey, as some of you may know, my name is Alison. I'm a co-founder at Back4app. And first of all, I would like to thank you, all of you who have managed time to jump on this, to join this webinar. It is the eve for Easter's, so here's a wishing for every one of you a wonderful Easter weekend. As you may know, this webinar is about security, and security has always been a high priority factor while building the Back4app platform. And I totally relate with your concerns, as your app stability and sustainability relies on a really robust and secure backend. Today, we are going to explore to deep dive into some security mechanisms that Back4app offers to make your app safer. I'm very excited to see what Alex will present, and now I will pass the word to Portia. Thank you.
Thank you, Alison. Hello, everyone. I am the Marketing and Communications Officer at Back4app. First, this event on Back4app security is long awaited and has been a popular concern among all of you. Today, we will explore Back4app security with our company's YouTube face and, of course, the architect, as we famously call him, Alex. Every stage of your app development process. Just a little housekeeping before we get started. If you have any questions during the presentation, please type them into the question box in your control panel. Charles, our customer success manager, and Alex would be answering them during the presentation. And we will also have time for some questions at the end. Now, without the time, over to Alex.
Hey, hello everyone. So nice to see so many people gathered for learning about security. We have at the moment 21 attendees to this webinar, which is awesome. So thank you so much to everyone who found the time to join, especially in a holiday, so we can all learn together. So I'll try to keep our presentation today as concise as possible, because what matters the most here is the basics of the security aspect of developing your app. So if you follow the steps that I'm showing today, from the very beginning, you can ensure your application is very secure. And if at any point during your development process, you can always rely on Back4app to assist you to achieve the best possible security measures. So if you're trying to develop your app and find something that you don't really know how to work and you have any question about it, you can always reach us on our support channels. We always will help you to uh, understand the concept so you can build your app the most secure as possible. So please don't go too far when you do not know what you're doing, because once you have your app published and working, it's quite more hard for you to go back and fix everything. If you start fresh with a totally closed security or very tight security aspect, your app will be secure from day zero, so you can rely it will always be secure. And this is one of the most important aspects for us here in Back4app, because when you choose our platform to do your app, we got lots of parts of the security already covered for you. So you don't have to worry about certificates or ciphers or anything like that, or encryption. We got you covered on all that. But this is a two-way communication. So you have to ensure your development as well is done the right way. So you can enjoy a full security aspect for your whole application, right? So let me share my screen with you guys and show you what we have for today. There you go. Can you guys see my screen? Charles, can you make a sign off for me? Can you see it? All right, thank
Yes.
you. So this is a brand new app. I just created this app, so I don't have any classes and users in it right now. And this is pretty much what you're going to see when you create your first app in Back4app. And Parse creates for us two classes for convenience: the user class, so you can create and manage users for your application, and the role class, so you can group together users with similar privileges for reading and writing. That makes it easier to maintain users over time. And we will be using those classes today, so you understand how those impact your app in the security aspect. And one of the most common questions that I get from you guys when I have to do technical calls is, here you will find your app's security keys. So your application ID, your client key, your JavaScript key. And most of you say, all right, but I will have these keys embedded into my app. What does happen if someone reverse engineer my app and then gets hold of these keys? And you have to understand that the way the framework is designed, these keys are meant to be exposed. So the security aspect of the keys are not so relevant for your app at all. So for instance, if you have a website that runs on our platform, and you have the SDK, JavaScript SDK embedded, all you have to do to know these keys is to right click and click inspect, and you'll see those keys. So they are exposed from the very beginning. So there's no point on having to try to hide it as much as possible. I always tell people, try to make it not as obvious and as exposed as it could be, because everything that we do that can make the life of a hacker more difficult, we should, but there's no really a mandatory point to encrypt or to protect those keys. They are made to be exposed. The only key that you should protect at all times is your master key. It is hidden on the panel, so you cannot see it when recording a screen, for instance. But with the master key, you can do other things to your app, and you should never embed your master key on the front end code. Only your application ID and your JavaScript key or the language key that you're using. And today I'll be coding in JavaScript. And so many of you ask me, why JavaScript? It's because JavaScript is the most common language in the world. So I think we reach more people when we do presentations with JavaScript. But all the concepts that I'll be showing today can be used no matter the language of the SDK that you choose, all right? So also in here, I created a Node.js application where I instantiated my SDK and initialized this app. So my app ID is here, my JavaScript is here, and my server URL is pointing to Back4app. And the first thing I am going to do is to create a function in here, a async function, so you can make asynchronous calls. And it will be empty right now, but then we will start working it through. So async function run, and then I'm going to call this function, so run. And to ensure it is working, I'm just console log something to my console. Hello world. If I run this, I have my hello world, so my code is working. And let's go back to our dashboard and to our database. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a user for myself so we can segregate information based on the users. Because most of the security aspect when dealing with cloud-based applications is to segregate information so one user cannot see the information that other user has. So let's create a new user here, add a row. My username will be Alex. My super complex password will be abc123, and my email is alex@back4app.com. You click add. Now I have this user here. And we are going to create a new class. And this is where you will see the security implementation in Back4app for the very first time. When you click create a class, it will ask you for a class name. So we're going to call this private user data. And in here, you can choose if you are going to create a protected class or a public class. And the difference between those are the protected class has sensitive information in it. So you should log in a user in order to operate its records. A public class, on the other hand, does not protect the records. So you do not have to be authenticated in order to see its records. When does it make sense to have one or the other? So every time you have sensitive information, information that the user should not see for himself or for other users, it should be created as protected. Any other cases should be created as public class. For instance, if you have a login screen where the user should choose the city where they are connecting from, at this point, you don't have a user created yet, so they cannot authenticate, but you still should list all the cities. So this makes sense to be a public read and write enabled class. So I'm not going to create any record for now, just by code, but having a user that can authenticate is the very first step for you to ensure the security of your app. So back to my code here. We're going to remove my console log, and then we are going to enable something that is mandatory only in Node.js and React.js environments. As those languages are JavaScript, but are meant to be running on the server side, to ensure nobody is holding sensitive data on the back end, the current user is turned off by default. So only for these languages, you have to create a line in here telling parse.user.enable unsafe current user. This will allow me to bring the current user that is currently logged in. This is only true for Node.js, React.js, and things and languages like that. All the other frameworks does not need this line to be called. And then we can try to make a login. So I'll wait, because this is an asynchronous call, parse.user.login. And then we are going to pass in my credentials. So Alex as my username and ABC123 as my password. With that done, we can then try to check if the current user was actually logged in. So we're typing const current user equals parse.user.current. And if I'm logged in, the current user will be myself. And the easiest way to check that is with a if-else statement. So if current user, which means if I have the current user object, I'm going to do something else, I'm going to do other something. And the very first line, if the user is successfully logged in and I have a current user, I'm going to print out some information. So console.log current user. And then I'm going to get my current user dot get. Get is how you read properties in our SDKs. And then username. So if I have a current user logged in, it should print the username. If not, we'll have a console.log current user not logged in. Now, if you run this code again, my current user is Alex, which means that I am currently logged in. And then we are going to see the very first aspect on how to protect your data. Back to my dashboard here. If you create a class, I'm going to create an example class. And for this demonstration, I'm going to create it as public. So create class. So my example class is here. And the first concept is what we call CLPs, or class level permissions. It is the ability for a user, a role, or a group to read and write the records of a specific class. So you will find the settings up in here. You have to select the class that you're working on. Click these three little dots here. And click security. And here you'll find class level permissions. If you want to see more advanced options, you can open up the advanced tab here. And here you will set what a authenticated user can do and cannot do, and also a public user. So the way the class was created as a public class, any user can get, find, count, create, update, delete records in this class, and also add new fields to it. We don't want that. If it is a class that I should protect information, then we can try to remove all these settings. So an unauthenticated user, a public user, cannot do anything to it. Then we should try to set the authenticated user. So when I say authenticated users, is any authenticated user. If I log in, if I Charles log in, if Alison logs in, they will have which kind of accesses inside this class. So let's say anybody who is currently logged in can get and find records in this class. So any other operations will be blocked for any users, even the authenticated ones. And I'm going to save the CLP. And also in here, you can try to use a role, a user, or a pointer to manually set a per user basis permission for this class. So I'm going to save this one for now. So save CLP. And I'm going to copy my object ID for the Alex user. So, oops, Command C, come back here, open it again. So let me expand this once again. If I am logged in, I'll immediately have the get and find methods available to me. But I want to specify some more actions for the Alex user specifically, so I can put in the object ID of that user here, and you'll see that it opened all the options for me. And then I can start adding or removing options in the way I want. So let's say that my user already has the get and find method, and I want to provide the count, create, update, and delete, but not the add field. So now my user will have all those extra permissions for this class specifically. Something that is not class related, but is also very important is here in app settings, server settings, core settings. And in here, you will find a few details of your app. So the first one is allow client class creation. We leave this on by default, but once your app is done and sent to production, it does not make a sense for you to create new classes from the client side. Your class should have all the classes that it needs to work already built in. So a very good practice is to come here and to remove this option. I will not remove it right now because I will have some code that will be working, but in a production environment, you want to set this off, okay? So back again, and let's go to our database. All right, so let's dive into some code. Here I have my example class. Where is my Visual Studio? So in this, if I have the user logged in, so we can start creating some records. And when creating new records, we will see the second aspect of a secure application, which is ACLs. If you go back to your dashboard, you'll see that you have a ACL column in here. And ACL stands for Access Control List. Is the ability for you read or write a specific object inside your database. So the granularity of security in Back4app goes as deep as the object level. So as long as a user has access to a class, then it will, the ACL will check if they have access to that or those specific records. And when you have a ACL and a CLP conflicting, let's say I do not have access to this class, but I do have access as an ACL to some records. The CLP will always win because it is resolved first. So you first resolve the ACL to see if the user has or not access to the class, and only then you resolve the ACLs. So in a conflict, the CLP will always win. And if I just add a new record in here, so add a row, we can see that the ACL is immediately created as public read and write. If I double click this, you see read and write in here. You can remove the read or the write as well from here for public users. And if you need for a role or for a specific user, as I did before, you have to paste in the object ID of the user or the role, and then you can set those automatically. Ideally, records that are sensitive should have the read and write for public. They should always be readable and writable for the user who created that record only, or perhaps it's grouped. You should see what makes sense in your application. But ideally, sensitive information classes should never have a ACL as public write and read. So let's dive into some code now. And since I have my user in here, I can start creating the ACLs for this user. We do that by typing current user dot set ACL new parse dot ACL, and then set it to the current user. This will create a new ACL and attach it to the current user that I have from my logged in process. So then let's create a new class with a new record and set its ACL. So let private data equals new parse dot object, and then as in my class name. So private user data. So inside this class, I will have the records to be protected by the ACL. So it will be readable and writable for this user only. So let's add some data in here. So private data.set, sets how we set properties. And we're going to put a telephone Oops, and put in some telephone number. So there you go. There is a telephone in there. If I just save the record as this, it will be public read and write because is the default values for a class. Then I have to set its ACL for the ACL of the current user. We do that by typing private data dot set ACL and new parse dot ACL and current user. Oops. Now let's try to save this record. This is an asynchronous call, so I'll wait. Private data dot save. Let's run this and see how it goes. Go back to our dashboard and refresh. I have to fully refresh to retrieve the new schemas. Here I have my private user data. The ACL gets only that one user, and the telephone is here. But sometimes it makes sense for you to have a public read, so everybody can read the record, but only that one user should be able to write to that class, to that record. So let's cover that situation. Here I'm only setting the ACL, but we can do it differently. We can do the set write ACL, set write access, sorry. And this will change only the write property in those records. And also we can do a private data dot set public read access and pass this as true. And this will ensure the new telephone, let's change the variant to 5555. So everyone will be able to read this record, but only my current user will be able to write it. Let's run this code again and see how it works. Oops, I got some error in here. Perhaps I should create an ACL for this. Let me remove this code and then we can try it again. So let ACL equals new parse.acl. Then we will set its properties. ACL.set public read access as true. Then we will have ACL.set write access for my current user as true. And then finally, my private data set ACL as the ACL I just created. Now, this seems right. Let's check if it works. There we go. Back to my dashboard. If we refresh it, you see that my 555 telephone has now public read, so anyone with access to this class can read it, but only my user has access to write it. So you have to balance on your app's design what makes sense for the end user. Should everybody be able to read this record or not? Should everybody be able to read write this record or not? If not, who should be able to read it and who should be able to write it? Perhaps only a user, perhaps a group of users. So you have to balance that yourself. And I understand those concepts can be quite challenging at the very first, especially in a call like this, but we still got you covered as we always have in Back4app. We have an assistant that will help you ensure your app is secure. All you have to do is go to your main dashboard or to your Back4app dashboard, if you will. And for every single app that you have in here, you see the app status button. We are working on the security app today. So here you have the app status. If you click this button, you will see the health of your application tab that shows all the successes requests that you made, all the total. If you have any problems, it will also show here. How is the health status of your app as general? But in here, you also have the security tab. If you click this tab, you'll see all the implications for the security of your app that our system found. Not only for your classes, not only for your cloud code, but as a whole. So for instance, you can see for my demo account, I'm not running multi-factor authentication, which can be a security risk for a production app, as an attacker that can have my email and my password could potentially log in and have access to my data. So if you want to really protect your application, you should use multiple factor authentication. You can see the client creation is allowed. So that one setting that I showed you that you should turn off on production apps, you should turn it off. It's telling me that. You can see that I have unrestricted access to find on the user class, and also to count, to get, to update, and to delete. This is something that I should probably change after my application goes to production, actually before my application goes to production, to ensure nobody can, for instance, list all my users. Only authenticated users should see their users' records, and only the records of that one user. I should not be able to see the child's users for details, for instance. What else do we have? The same applies for the role class. So I should always change my role class. So only users belonging to that role should be able to see the details of the role. Also for the session class, and here on the private user data, as you can see, the CLP is open, so any user can find, count, get, create, and update records on that one class. But if you notice, the other class that I created is not showing in here because I closed it with CLPs, so it understands that only logged in users will be able to access that data. So if you follow this report here, you will be 90% covered. If you have any questions on how to implement a very secure app, you can always reach us by our chat or our Slack channel, or even for email. You can send emails for me. We always try to answer all the questions. I do not know all the languages that our framework covers, but I do know a lot of them. So if you have any questions, just drop me an email or reach us by the chat. Even on YouTube, you can leave a comment on our videos. This video will be on YouTube as well, so you can see it as many times as you want. And another aspect that's not really covered by Back4app, but can impact Back4app is, as you probably know, you can use NPM modules on Cloud Code, which accelerates your development quite a lot. And you should always use NPM modules that are verified and that are kept up in a constant basis, so you can ensure your NPM modules are also secure. All the rest for the security aspect of application is covered by us. So the validity of the certificates, the time for the time and date for the certificates, the ciphers, everything we got you covered, so you don't have to worry about it. But if you follow these steps that I showed you today and understand these concepts, you will have a very secure app from the very, very beginning. So this is pretty much what I had shown you for today, guys. As I said, this is more a concept than as an implementation, though we did have some implementation. But once you understand the concept, all your apps will be very, very secure from the very, very first time. So I think we should now open for questions. So let me see. We already have some questions in here. Let me just try to read it. Hi. Is it possible to create classes and their associate CLPs in code, or does it have to be done via dashboard? Well, Vandip, I never created CLPs by code myself. As I understand, CLPs should be created by the dashboard, but the ACLs can be set on the SDKs. So you can set your CLPs. You probably shouldn't have so many classes to start with. So if you have like 10 or 20 classes, it's not so troublesome to create those CLPs from the dashboard. But as the CLPs can grow up as your number of users grows, it makes more sense to create the ACLs from the front end as implementing code, and the CLPs as from the dashboard. Okay. Then Eric Hetlam. By the way, I always tell you guys, I'm sorry if I'm misspelling your name. I'm trying my best, but I'm reading mostly as a Portuguese speaker, so please don't take this too serious, all right? So if you have a class with multiple inserts from multiple users, where each user set private ACL on creation, will only those saved with the user's private ACL be returned for that user with on find? Well, if you have multiple users writing to a class, it makes much more sense to have those users set into a role and then giving and removing permission to the role, because when you do it like that, you have no risk of leaving one or two or three users behind, or as in forgetting to set their properties. So if you have multiple users writing records to a class and they are grouped or sharing records, you should probably be using a role for that. That said, we go back to our dashboard here, let me go back there. Security, let's go to our dashboard. Let's create a new user here. Let's create Charles user. So Charles, it will have the exact same password as me, so abc123, and his email, so charles@back4app.com. And so now I'll copy Charlie's object ID. Let's go back to our private user data. You can always keep adding users in here and set individual permissions. So it doesn't matter if you have like 10,000 users and you have to set ACLs for every single one of them. It just makes it more confused to manage over time. On the other hand, it's much more simple if you have just one line of a role showing in here and all the users contained into that role. You have to see if this approach works for your design, but it's much easier because can you imagine having like 20,000 users for this one record, and every time you try to query, you have to check 20,000 records to see if the user is in there or not. It might affect performance. So it makes more sense to leave it in a role, and then we evaluate the whole role to see if it has access or not to that one record. Right? So next one, Scott Stafford. How do you define a group and give right access to everyone in the group? Great question, Scott. So let's create a role in here. When you say group, I usually refer as it to roles. So we can add a role here. And then you can create a role name. So let's call administrators, right? And let's create another one. Oops, if you ask me for a ACL, so let's create just a public one. So let's create another one. Oops. Name is readers. The ACL for readers. Remember, I'm only using public for this demonstration. As you have roles, you should probably remove the read and write and create an ACL specific for reading and write records for this group, all right? But let's say that readers have only access to read. So save ACL, and you can see this one is public read and this one is public read and write. Now, inside the role, you have the relations for the users class. So we can add users in here. So let's say Charles is only a reader. All I have to do is to click here, attach existing rows from user, paste his object ID here, and attach. And this is something that you can do programmatically as well. So you don't really have to come here and copy and paste object IDs for every single user. This you can do by code, right? So from now on, every class and every record that has the reader's role set to it, Charles will be able to read it as long as he matches the CLP for that class. And for every single class or record that has the administrator's role attached to it, it will be able to publicly read and write that specific record as long as the reflects the CLP as well. All right. So, do you have any other questions, guys?
Question
I think
on the
Charles
law.
is saying something.
Yeah, he sent on the chat. If you can take a look, please.
Oh, Tony Lau, all right, found it. So can the ACL be set on the field level instead of the record level? I might want to try a specific user to see all the fields, but general public only limited fields. As long as I know, no. The ACL encapsulates only the whole record, so you cannot set it by properties. What you can do, though, is to check those ACLs using Cloud Code and then using the select method in your queries, so you could return distinct properties or columns for different kinds of users. So if a user matches this one group, it will return these columns. If it matches the other group, it will return other columns. It's the select method, and then you can pass on the columns that you want to include. Right? Any other questions that we have? And remember, guys, if you don't have any questions right now, but during your implementation, you find some questions or gets stuck at something, you can always reach us on the chat or on the email or even on YouTube. Just find any video on YouTube and post your question there. We always answer all the questions, okay?
Hey, Alex, I
Right.
have a question that may be interesting to answer because it's a frequent question. How to create a super user?
How to create a super user? Well, that actually depends. If you're going to have only one super user as a root user in a Linux system or a administrator user on Windows systems, then you should probably create an user and set the ACLs and CLPs to reflect that user only. So you would give full access to, let me show all the options again, security, class level permission. You should give all these accesses, including the add field access, to that one user. If, on the other hand, what you're saying is, I want to create a group of users that has super user privileges, and then I can add or remove users from that group, then you should probably create a role and then give all these permissions for that role, and all the users inside the role will be affected, and they will be able to create new classes, remove classes, as long as the creation of classes from the client side is specified on the app settings, and they will be able to add new fields, remove remove existing fields from the existing classes. So this is a very powerful tool, and you have to see what makes more sense for your specific usage. Having one super user that can do anything, and then you set all these properties on for that one user, or for a group and then have multiple users inside it, but always setting all these as true. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
All right, any other questions that we have? So as I see we are running out of questions, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. But if you have any other questions, guys, please leave it on the chat. We still have a few minutes to go.
Just received a question from Fred William. He asked if we had a Discord or any chat. Yes, we do. We have a Slack channel. Alex, can you show, please, how you can
Yeah,
achieve
sure.
this link?
Yeah, I just stopped, but I will open again and show him. So share. All right. If you go to back4app.com and up here in support, here you can click the jump in under the Slack section. It will take you directly to our Slack channel. We have lots of people there, everybody willing to help, including our staff members. We are very active in this channel. So if you have any questions, doesn't matter if it is security oriented or not, any questions at all, just go in there, ask. If someone doesn't answer it for you, someone from our staff will jump in and answer it.
Okay, I have a question for our audience. I would like to know what kind of topic they would like to see for our next webinar in May. So do you guys have anything in mind? Introduction in the blockchain, that's great.
Oh, that's a good one. And by the way, guys, if you don't have any ideas right now, but if you find something that you would like to see at any moment, you can always, again, reach us through the chat or YouTube or email. Just drop any suggestions. We are always looking for what your guys are interested in, so we can record videos, make tutorials, make some content, blog posts, and documentations. So we want to assist you with what you need. So please let us know for any channel what exactly you want to see. It's from our common interest to attend you, okay? Cloud code. Oh, right. We already have a section of cloud code on YouTube and on our docs as well. You can check that. But if you want to see some specifics on cloud code, like how do I implement this or how do I implement that, you can just drop a question on YouTube. I will record the video especially for you, Vandip and Ritika. You're very welcome.
Okay, about a blockchain, I'm gonna leak some news for you guys. We're going to bring into an upcoming webinar case that was built using Back4app and blockchain, and we are going to explore, and the guys from this company are going to explain how do they use blockchain together with Back4app to power up a gaming app. That would be awesome.
Yeah, and I don't know if you guys noticed it, but we already have a blockchain feature built in Back4app. There is a video on how to use it on our YouTube channel, and then all your records are persisted to a Ethereum network running inside our infrastructure. So it's a test net running inside our infrastructure. So you can have unquestionable proof that the record was created with that data at that time. So this is already working, guys. So if you want to check out, go to our YouTube and look for blockchain. You'll see the video on how to use it.
Okay, I cannot see any. You guys have any additional question, anything you need to know? Or we can go to our closing. Okay, so I'd like to say, there is a question.
Is there any difference in request count if using SDKs compared to Cloud Code? Yes, and that's a very good question, actually. So every time you use the SDK and makes a request to the servers, it is counted as one API request. But on Cloud Code, you only have the count for the execution of the Cloud Code. So when you on demand start the execution of Cloud Code is one request, but all the operations running inside that Cloud Code does not count as a request. So if you need to save up on requests, implementing some smart cloud code can save you a lot on API request count. Live query are requests. I mean, if it counts as a request, well, yes and no, because live queries is a concept that we use WebSockets to deliver data to your front end. So you do not make any requests to receive a update on a live query or a subscription to it. So in this case, it does not count. But if you're trying to create new records that are into a live query subscribed class, or perhaps if you're executing queries using the SDK, then yes, it does count as a request. So depending on what you're doing. Subscribing or exiting, I'm not really sure about this too. I'll get in touch with our development team and I'll let you know. A protection feature built in which protects from DDoS attacks on a lower level than Node.js. Yes, we do, but when I speak about DDoS attacks, it depends a lot on the infrastructure that you have to handle this kind of situation. I mean, we do have huge servers with huge infrastructure to hold this kind of things, but we cannot be 100% ensured that it will not suffer for those attacks. We do have our whole cloud set up to resist DDoS attacks, and most of our scalable servers can scale to a degree where it can keep on working even under a DDoS attack. But that said, we cannot guarantee that we will keep working under a DDoS attack. But yes, we do some features that we set up on the infrastructure that help us to prevent and to respond up to a certain level to the DDoS attacks. But those are not configurable by you and users. These are done by our infrastructure team, okay? You're very welcome. All right, guys, I think our systems all patched on log4j. Tony Lau, I'm pretty sure we do not have log4j into our stack. There's some time that I didn't check it as I'm mostly on the architecture and on the YouTube content creation lately, but I'm pretty sure we don't have log4j on our stack. Unless it changed.
Carlos, do you have, can you confirm?
Yes, I can confirm.
Yeah, Rodrigo Talco, Flutter SDK about push notifications. We are working really, really hard on a tutorial on how to send and receive push notifications with Flutter. I've been working on it for weeks now, but we have had so many requests for content that I'm working a little bit on it every day, so I don't have the content fully working yet, but it's on the plans and it's under work. So as soon as I have it, we'll have a YouTube video only for this, perhaps a couple of videos, because this is something that a lot of users ask us for. So it's on the works. Great.
Okay, I'd like to proceed to the closing. And first of all, thank you all for attending this webinar. It was amazing to see many people coming from different countries and jumping into this call. And thank you, Alex, for the great presentation. And thank you. I'm gonna pass the word to Alex.
All right, guys, thank you so much for spending your holidays with us. It's great to see how interested in our product you are. Be sure we do our best to make our product the most easiest to use and the most secure that we can. So we are always working to make it better for you guys. So as always, if you have any questions, suggestions, or any comments at all, please reach us. We are interested in know what you guys need, and we will always do our best to try to meet your demands. So thank you so much for spending time with us today. I hope you like this content, and be sure to subscribe to our next webinar. We didn't define the topic yet, but we will soon. And so if you want to see something specific, get in touch with us, because we might end up making a webinar on especially what you want to see. So thank you once again. Have a great Easter, everyone, and a great weekend.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Have a great weekend. Bye-bye.